Most doctors would have missed it, but this one didn't. Dr. Evan Lewis never thought a quiet Thursday evening at his small-town clinic would change his life, but some days begin ordinary and end unforgettable. The clinic was nearly empty when the nurse stepped into his office and said a father and daughter had just walked in. Something about them made her uneasy. The doctor almost told her to schedule them for tomorrow, yet something in her voice stopped him. She was steady and calm by nature. If she was concerned, there was a reason. The pair sat in the waiting room beneath the soft hum of fluorescent lights. The father, tall and composed, scrolled his phone. The girl beside him wore a red hoodie and twisted its sleeves around her fingers. She looked up briefly when the doctor greeted her, then dropped her gaze again. The father spoke for her, saying she'd been dizzy and tired. It sounded harmless, but there was tension in the air. Subtle, heavy. The kind that makes a person's instincts whisper before their mind finds the words. Dr. Lewis began the examination. Routine checks, pulse, pressure, temperature. Everything within range, yet the girl flinched whenever her father's voice cut through the quiet. He asked the man to wait outside while he finished some tests. The father hesitated, then stepped into the hallway. The door closed, and for a moment the girl's shoulders dropped, as though she could finally breathe. He spoke gently, asking how long she'd been feeling unwell. She whispered that she wasn't sick exactly, just scared, though she couldn't explain of what. He asked if she felt safe at home. She bit her lip and shook her head almost imperceptibly. Before he could say more, she looked toward the door, afraid he might return. He decided not to press further, only told her she'd done the right thing coming in and that she wasn't alone. She nodded, but said nothing else. When the father re-entered, Dr. Lewis kept his tone calm. He recommended further evaluation at the hospital. Simple blood work, perhaps a scan, nothing alarming. The father's reaction was immediate. He dismissed the idea, saying it wasn't necessary. The doctor insisted, offering to call ahead himself, but the man's polite smile grew thin. He took the referral slip, thanked him curtly, and left with the girl close behind. The door clicked shut, leaving silence thick enough to hear the doctor's own heartbeat. Later that night, long after closing, the nurse asked if he was all right. He admitted something about that family felt wrong. "Do you think it's abuse?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. He only said, "I don't know, but I can't shake it." On the drive home, the image of the girl's downcast eyes followed him like a shadow. He tried to read, tried to let logic overrule instinct, but logic felt cold beside the memory of that small, frightened voice. He finally gave up, pulled on his coat, and drove through the quiet streets to the address listed on the patient form. The father's car was parked in the driveway, lights glowing in the window. They hadn't gone anywhere. He stood outside, debating what right he had to interfere. Then he knocked. The father opened the door, surprise flickering into irritation. Dr. Lewis explained that he wanted to make sure they'd gone to the hospital. The man forced a smile and said the girl was asleep, no need for further fuss. Behind him, in the hallway, a shadow shifted. A faint sound, a quick intake of breath, reached the doctor's ears. "I understand," he said evenly. "Good night." The man nodded and shut the door. Dr. Lewis stood there for several seconds, heart pounding. Then he went home, sat at his desk, and made a call to the local family welfare office. He described what he'd seen, the fear, the control, the way the girl wasn't allowed to speak. They promised to review the report immediately. He slept little that night, but woke the next morning certain he had done the only thing he could. A few days later, a detective phoned. They had visited the home and confirmed the girl was now safe, receiving care. The detective thanked him for trusting his instincts. Dr. Lewis listened silently, a mix of relief and sorrow in his chest. He knew he might never learn the full story, and maybe that was best. What mattered was that she'd been found. Weeks turned into months. Life at the clinic went on. Checkups, prescriptions, the comforting monotony of healing ordinary things. Yet something in him had shifted. He began to pay closer attention to small silences, subtle gestures, the space between words. Rosa noticed it too. When she saw a child who avoided eye contact or a parent who answered too quickly, they shared a glance, quiet and understanding. They had learned to listen differently. Their approach spread. A local teacher asked them to speak at her school about emotional health and recognizing hidden distress. The session was simple but powerful, ending with the doctor telling students that sometimes courage begins with asking twice if someone is okay. That talk led to another at a neighboring school, then a small community program teaching adults how to recognize when someone might be struggling. They called it the Listening Project. It wasn't about fixing problems, only about noticing them early enough that fixing was still possible. The project grew faster than anyone expected. Volunteers, students started peer support circles, even local police officers joined training sessions. Each time the doctor was invited to speak, he emphasized that it had all begun with a moment of hesitation, one decision to knock instead of walk away. Every instinct you ignore, he told them, is a chance for compassion that disappears. At home, his wife Amelia supported every step. She worked in social services and understood the quiet burdens of those who help. One night she told him, "You can't save everyone, but sometimes saving one person changes the rest of us enough that fewer need saving." He never forgot that. 2 years later, the doctor received a small note in the mail. The handwriting was careful and familiar. "Because you listened, I learned to speak." No signature. He smiled, folded the note, and placed it in the drawer beside his stethoscope. He didn't need to know more. Some stories are complete even without the ending. Over time, the story of the doctor who listened became something of a local legend. The clinic remained modest, but its reputation for kindness drew people from nearby towns. Reporters wrote pieces about how a single act of empathy had inspired a movement. When asked for interviews, Dr. Lewis always declined. He said the story belonged to everyone who chose to pay attention, not to him. Years passed. The town changed, yet its spirit stayed gentle. One evening, as snow fell softly outside, Dr. Lewis sat by his office window reflecting on the years behind him. He realized that every good thing that had happened, the workshops, the safer homes, the culture of openness, had started with a single moment of noticing. He thought about how easily he could have dismissed that feeling, how close he had come to doing nothing. The weight of that realization felt humbling and hopeful at all once. When spring came, he decided it was time to retire. The clinic had younger doctors now, people he'd trained to lead with empathy as much as knowledge. On his last day, the staff surprised him with a framed photograph of everyone standing under a banner that read, "Listening Saves Lives." Beneath it were dozens of handwritten notes from patients and neighbors. He thanked them, saying he had simply done what any of them could do. He had listened. That evening, he and Amelia took a walk through town. The air was cool, the streets alive with the simple sounds of community. Children laughing, doors closing, the distant whistle of a train. They passed the schoolyard where a mural now covered one wall. It showed a stethoscope looping into the shape of an ear, painted in bright colors. Underneath were the words, "Be the one who listens." He felt his throat tighten with quiet pride. As they reached their porch, a car pulled up. A woman stepped out, holding a small child's hand. She hesitated at the gate and called softly, "Dr. Lewis?" When he turned, recognition dawned. It was Claire, the girl from years ago. Grown, confident, eyes bright with a peace he hadn't seen before. She smiled and said she had moved back to town to work as a counselor. The little girl beside her held a bunch of wildflowers. She wanted to meet the man who helps people listen, she said. The child handed him the flowers and whispered that she wanted to be a doctor someday. He felt warmth rise in his chest that words couldn't contain. They stayed a while, sharing tea and quiet laughter. Claire spoke about her work, how she tried to help families rebuild trust. She said the world still had pain, but it also had people willing to notice it sooner. As she spoke, Dr. Lewis realized how far that single moment had traveled, across years, through lives, multiple